Thank you for coming, and thank you for organizing this program. And it's my pleasure to be in this space. And thanks to Habib to connect us. Although Habib saying that he saw me when he was very young, but I don't remember because luckily we had a lot of young Afghans during the last 20 years in Afghanistan, which give the possibility for them to study and to gain their knowledge to be useful for Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we lost it. I don't know if you want me to read from the book, or I can just tell you some of the things which is on the book. The book is, as she said, Outspoken is the name of the book. It's my fight for freedom and equality in human rights in Afghanistan. It is a history that I witness and I gone through myself. So that is what is I tried to write, because there are a lot of things that gone in the wrong direction in Afghanistan. We lost a lot of lives. We lost a lot of opportunities. Afghanistan being, unfortunately, a reason for rise of fundamentalism, of extremism. We were not like this before. So I would like all of you to at least read the book. I don't push you to buy, but you can share the book if one person buy it, and then you can share among yourself. So that is the story about the book. And I dedicated the book not to my mother or my father or my husband, because I lost my husband during the USSR, after the coup d'etat in Afghanistan, and after the Russian invasion. Actually, he was taken before Russian invasion, and I never saw him. To the people of Afghanistan who never had a grave during this so many years. To my sisters who live under the gender apartheid in Afghanistan. So to the victims of sexual gender-based violence all over the world. Unfortunately, women still face a lot of violence in different parts of the country. So I don't know if I start to read a little bit of it. Chapter 1 is Eyewitness. I have 3 strikes against me. I'm a woman. I speak of 4 women, and I'm a Hazara, the most persecuted ethnic group in Afghanistan. So I just read some of this. It began as a sparkling May morning. It was May 2021. On an otherwise ordinary day, the weather was perfect, sunny and warm, with a light breeze blowing, springing into Kabul. The blossoms had drifted off the trees, making way for the leaves to burst onto the branches. It was approaching the end of the Ramadan. We will have Ramadan again in March, but this was the month. It was actually 27th of Ramadan. The holy ritual that requires prayer and fasting for 30 days. So the anticipation of Eid, the celebration after the Ramadan, the celebration that marks the end of fasting, was on everyone's mind. Families and friends would gather to pray and give thanks and to savor traditional food like steaming rice, a platter of Kabuli palau that you saw over there, ashak, you already saw there, bolani, lamb kebab, delicious sheer pere, Chairperson is not there, but you have the different kind of suite. And of course, each other company for a country that had experienced so much bloodshed and so many setbacks. This rebirth season of spring could have been seen as a sign of deliverance. But on that day, May 8, 2021, at 4:27 p.m., when the first explosion tore into the NGO Shuhada school. There was a girls' school in the west of Kabul, in Dasht-e-Barchi, a neighborhood in West Kabul where members of the Hazara ethnic minority lives. My hope for the future were dashed and my heart broke again. It was not the first one, so that's why it's again and again. Although I could not have predicted it at that time, this was, in fact, the beginning of the end of the Afghanistan. I had helped to rebuild the country because I built a lot of school and I'm very much in favor of education, so that was really hard. The event of May 8, the who, the why, and the what go a long way to describing the wrongs and that need to be right. My country is to see a new beginning. So the reason I started with this, that day I established also a university. So I was at the university talking with the lecturer and the professors to begin. We had already a women empowerment department. So I wanted to establish a research department and how to increase the women empowerment department work. Because with the women empowerment department, we were giving scholarship to the girls who were not able to pay the fees. And we were also giving them free English and computer training. And we give them, training them on peace building, and also we were trying to train them on gender issues. I mean, gender training was something common, and after the first Taliban regime fall, because we wanted to teach the students that why are we talking about women's rights, and what is the importance. So the way we were training the students, we were saying, can you list what your mother do and what your father do from the early morning up to when they go to the bed? Who's getting up early first? Who's going to bed the last? So that way we were giving them that you should not feel kind of threatened if women are empowered, because there's no difference. So we were talking about that when my telephone message passed that the attack was happened on the school. The warning that day came by way of beeping from my cell phone. I was in the midst of the meeting at Gawashad University, where we were discussing a hopeful future, including the new research department and the enhancement of the program of women's empowerment. A horribly familiar chill crept up my spine when I saw the message that flashed on my screen. Explosion, Dasht-e-Barchi. I saw the message that flashed again in my telephone. In such a crowded part of the city, I know there would be bloodshed. But I hope that the casualties would be few and that wounds are minor. It was impossible to forget the terrible attack that Chairperson had already experienced, because it was the attack on the maternity hospital when the mothers were in labor. They attacked the hospital. And also in another educational centers. The sports club, the wedding hall, the maternity hospital, and several mosques, casualties had been high. So that is the beginning of the book, the first chapter of the book. And then it goes, I think maybe it's better that I tell you more than reading the book. And then there was another message. There was another message on the phone that it was 4 explosions. And that time of the day, usually people, when they are fasting, these girls were also fasting because the girls were from 9th grade above. They were just 16, 17, 18 years old. And they were already cautious, the families. They were not letting the girls to go all together. They were releasing them 2 to 3 classes per few minutes in order not to have a crowd, because they were attacking the educational center. And the scene was so difficult because the mothers and the fathers and the relatives were running, and the whole street was full of blood. They were pieces of their bodies. They were part of their shoes. These were the girls who were working at the carpet weaving centers in the morning. In the afternoon, they were going to school. So that is the problem of the current regime in Afghanistan. I just read a few other sentences from the other part of the book. I was a student when the coup d'etat in Afghanistan happened. So in the Kabul University, we had only one university in Kabul, and there was another one in Jalalabad. But the Kabul University was the main university of the country. And then I was still in the university when the Russian soldiers came in Afghanistan in 1979. So when we finished, actually, it was not only me, the whole class, when we graduated, that was the first year that the dean of the university or the government refused to give us the diploma, to give us the certificate. They give us a piece of paper that we are graduated as a medical doctor. That was all, without even our photos with that piece of paper. So what I did, actually, I bought a fake diploma in Pakistan in 300 rupees or 200 rupees. So then I've been refugee for 17 years in Pakistan. So when I came to Quetta, to Pakistan, to apply for a job, I got open cough. Actually, I was practicing in the remote Hazara area, which was free, which was not under control of the government on that time. So I came to Pakistan also for treatment, and then I went to, it was difficult, so I went to apply for a job. I applied for a job at a 100-year-old British-built facility called Mission Hospital. People who've been to Pakistan, to Balochistan, they know Mission Hospital. There I met a retired British Pakistani police officer called Frederick Ennis, who was now the director of this non-governmental organization, Interchurch Aid, a consortium of churches providing funds for Afghan refugee relief programs. I told Mr. Ennis I was a medical doctor, and that a classmate of mine was already working at this hospital. She came to US. Unfortunately, she died here because of brain cancer. I didn't wrote that part. He asked if I had a medical diploma. I said yes and no. I told him the pro-Soviet regime had deprived the graduates of a certificate, so we could not practice outside of the country. So they did not give us the certificate because we were leaving the country. Then I explained that I had gone to Peshawar, to a city on the other side of Pakistan, where a diploma of all sorts were sold for 300 rupees, $10 on that time, and had bought a medical diploma. He laughed out loud at my audacity. I said I had be happy to take a test and suggest he get in touch with Dr. Fau. Dr. Fau was a German doctor who established a big hospital in Karachi for people with leprosy. Dr. Fau was coming to Afghanistan and collecting leprosy patients and bringing back to Karachi. This man knew Dr. Fau. So I said, contact Dr. Fau, that I'm a medical doctor. So in the clinic, and there was MSF also, MSF hospital in the area, MSF doctors from France, all of whom would attest to my work. We went to see the director of the hospital, Dr. Luther, who was a medical director of the hospital as well as a surgeon and eye specialist. Dr. Luther asked me a couple of questions about the disease I was treating, and then said, Dr. Fau has spoken to us about you. If you want the job, you can start tomorrow. So that is one of the experience that I gone through without having a medical degree. Chapter 6, Accused. On the afternoon of September 9, 2001, two journalists went to the city of Talqan to interview Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Mujahideen leader of the Northern Alliance that held 5 to 10% of the country. The pair activated a bomb hidden on their camera, killing Massoud. It was the first suicide bombing in Afghanistan. We didn't have suicide bomber in Afghanistan from the beginning of the conflict, which was 1978 until 2001. Some analysts believe Massoud's death ordered by Osama bin Laden himself set the stage for what would follow. I was just before supporting supper time in Quetta on September 11, when we learned what was happening in the United States. 4 planes had been hijacked by a terrorist. 2 had flown to the famous Twin Towers in New York. Another hit the Pentagon. The fourth plane crashed into the field in Pennsylvania in New York City. When the courageous passenger overtook the hijacker, 19 hijackers had committed murder, suicide, killing 2,996 people, and injuring more than 6,000. None of those hijackers were Afghans. All were Arabs. But what is next? We got all the bombs. We got all the fighting. And we got the Taliban back after 20 years. So Afghanistan has been at war for now 46 years. We had the Russian with 150,000 soldiers in Afghanistan. They could not control the people because the people did not support the invasion and also the regime. Then we had unfortunately the USSR invasion in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, it was used for Western countries, including your country, who wanted to stop the USSR power to the south of Asia, or to stop the advancement of the USSR in that area. And they used religion as a weapon of war and tried the most conservative group of people and help organize them, help them, give them weapon, train them to fight against USSR. USSR left Afghanistan in 1989 with Geneva Accord. But then what? We had those people who were trained, equipped, and empowered in Afghanistan, and they start fighting among themselves. They actually killed more people and destroyed the rest of the country. I mean, the villages were destroyed by the Russian because they were bombing every village. They were bombing the livestock of the people. They were bombing the water points. They killed hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed a lot of villages. And then the Taliban came. Taliban ended up with unfortunately, with I repeat, September 11. And we got Taliban was removed, but we didn't learn from that. And we had 20 years of continued war. The Taliban were removed from power, but not from the scene. I think that is a good example that you cannot eliminate completely the people with fighting. You have to give facilities and education and economical support to the people to support the regime, to support themselves. So unfortunately, we had the agreement between Taliban and the US government in February 29, 2020. And then the evacuation, the complete withdrawal of the troops from Afghanistan. And you saw the evacuation. Anyone who can look at those, who can just think about, who can feel the pain of the mother who saw that her son is falling from the plane as like a piece of cloth. It's very, very painful. So what I try to say is that we need to heal the wound of the people. Unfortunately, Taliban came back after 20 years with a lot of losses that we had. With the presence of the NATO forces and American forces in Afghanistan, we got a lot of achievement also. But the loss was really, really big. I was the first Minister of Women's Affairs after the first Taliban regime was collapsed for 6 months, because I was calling for accountability and justice. Our own warlords, our own extremist leader, didn't like me. So then I was the chairperson of Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission for 17 years, and we were able to bring a lot of changes in the law in the country and facilitate the women's freedom and equality in the country, somehow part of it. But it was a lot of resistance, of course, because they lose the power. I always say that women's rights is not only because of the gender, it's because of the power. It's actually a political issue. In order to control, in order to have power on half of the population, that's why it's always become political tool for any politician, including in this country. I would read the chapter 11. There are no winner in the war. Everybody is loser. Everyone loses in one way or another. Starting over requires I cannot pronounce this word, scrupulous examination of the past, a critical analysis of the population, and an invitation, a national builder to come to the table. We are a country of many ethnic groups. Our population is mostly uneducated. We have used and abused religion and culture to elect and expel people in power throughout history, but in particular for the last 4 decades. All of this has contributed to the fissure in our land. We are not united, so we cannot stand as one. But we are passionately and proudly Afghan, so no one has been able to defeat us. But again, we are not the winner. We are practically the loser. With all these sad things in this book, but it's a lot of good information to learn from, and see the history of the last 40 some years, or maybe more than that, from a lens of a woman who born, who brought up, who studied, who worked in that country. I just want to share a good news today, because as I said that I spent all of my life to call for accountability and justice. In my personal view, access to justice is not a luxury. It's a basic human rights, and everybody should have the right to justice and to basic human rights, including education. We are facing with a regime who doesn't allow the girls to get education beyond 6th grade. Can you imagine this? That you have a girl and she has to be at home, and she has to get education. I mean, to get education is not something that you should dream about it. It should be. It is necessary. It is must. But unfortunately, that is not the case for the Afghan young women and girls. And they only allowed the girls and young women to go to nursing and midwifery school. And recently they closed down that one as well. And that is a country with 40 million population. It's not only the case of or the problem of women in that country. It's the problem of society. And it's get to the other country. Now the others are learning from Taliban. In Mali, the extremists are saying that if Taliban can do in Afghanistan, why we cannot do in Mali, in Africa? In other countries, they use the same thing. So I think it's really essential to see that the human rights is universal and it should be for everybody. And good quality education and access to good quality of education is also a basic human rights, and it should be available for everyone. I believe that we can reduce the conflict and all these negative action by spending on education and also on basic health services, including the access to reproductive rights and health. So the good news today is the prosecutor from ICC, from International Criminal Court, today announced that he will apply for indictment of the Taliban leader and also the Supreme Court judge of the Taliban. And hopefully, that will be a step to reduce the culture of impunity in Afghanistan. And one of the reasons that we failed, I think, was the culture of impunity and lack of accountability and justice. Thank you. So I stop here. It's not a very happy story, but I'm happy to answer any question you have.
Yeah, so you began by saying that you're a member of an ethnic minority. It is the most persecuted ethnic minority in Afghanistan. And I'm wondering if you could explain, it's the Hazara, right?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, I think it's, again, going back to 200 years in Afghanistan. And it was started with one of the Amir who claimed that we are also, the majority of the Hazaras are Shia. Part of the Hazaras, by force, become Sunnis. But the remaining Hazaras who are Shias, because of our feature, we are mainly look like Asian. You could see Habib as an example. I'm not a good example of Hazaras, but I am Hazara. My face, I would say, not a good example of Hazara. And because of our ethnicity and because of our religion, we always been prosecuted and discriminated against. The property and the land of the people were taken and given to the Pashtuns. And still it's going on in this Taliban, new Taliban, or second round of Taliban. Taliban number 2, we call it. And they take people's land and they enforce them to leave. And it's the question of power, I think. Yes.
Thank you very much. Dr. Seb, به اجازه شما. Do you mind if I add a point to what Dr. Samar said? Thank you very much. My name is Misak, and I'm an Afghan journalist. I've been here in Pittsburgh for 3 years now. Well, why Hazaras are the most persecuted ethnic group in Afghanistan? Because Hazaras believe in democracy. Hazaras are liberals. Hazaras are like Dr. Samar, how she looks. Hazaras are like my wife Zainab, that she was also a journalist in Afghanistan. And she went to school, she went to college. Hazaras are like these girls. that they exercise their individual freedom. And that's exactly what makes Hazaras, Dr. Samar, as one of the targets. Actually, Hazaras are targets for Taliban, killing targets for Taliban in Afghanistan itself. And it's only not Taliban, other terrorist groups, radical groups that they are against women's rights, they're against human rights, they're against democracy, they are against Hazaras. Thank you very much.
I have two questions. One, I'm not sure how much you, through your own sources, still have contacts in the inner circles of Afghan Taliban leadership. Recently, we have heard that one of the top deputies called for the right of women to be educated completely. So my question about that is, does that indicate any significant split, or is that person simply an outlier and that no one will listen to? It'd be nice if it was some kind of split coming, and perhaps that position could win. And second of all, if men are not allowed to touch women, how is it proposed that women will get obstetric and gynecological care if we're not going to educate women to take care of them? Does the Taliban have any ideas about that at all?
Actually, one is the deputy foreign minister of Taliban, Frank-Ratchye, just raised his voice 2 days ago. And he said in a graduation that not allowing women in Afghanistan is not fair. Not fair. For me, it's a crime. So, and before that, one of the Taliban leaders, one of the Haqqani leaders, the Khalil Rahman Haqqani, was killed in suicide attack. He was the one who was actually organizing the suicide attacks against the others. But he was targeted because they hold their cabinet meeting in Kandahar with their leaders. I think they had some discussion over there. We don't know exactly, because they take the phones and everything from everyone when they see this invisible person. And then when he was killed, it was rumored that they have some problems. I think he opposed to Mullah Haibatullah, the leader of Taliban, that the girls should go get education. We don't know exactly if it's true or not. But that is what has happened. And then this one raised his voice. He actually is educated. This one got his education in India, the higher education in India. He's former military officer, actually. So we don't know. We hope that there will be some lights, some split between them, because that would be the only reason to weaken them. The other rumor is that they are getting corrupt, and they get a lot of, they take anything from people under the name of religious issues, under the zakat, and under the different names, false accusation, and then they get money. They arrest girls, and then they go and the family comes and they ask for money, and then get a written guarantee from them to release the girls from the jails. It's a different kind of extortion. So corruption would hopefully make them weaker, and somehow it would be a way to reduce their unity and their togetherness. Yeah, he raised his voice. Let's see, because his own daughters are educated outside. Their daughters, the one who are in Qatar or in Emirates or in Pakistan, their daughters are studying, but they're not allowing the others to. So it's difficult to judge, but yeah. Difficult to trust them. Yes?
Well, my other question was, how is it proposed that women will get obstetric and gynecological care if men cannot touch women's bodies and we're not educating women to take care of women?
No, they touch women's bodies. All of them have 4 wives, or they are getting married and married and married for 4 wives. And because the access to contraception is very limited, and they did not allow. They fine the pharmacies and they close down and punish the pharmacies if they sell contraception. They want more population, and they keep saying that we need more Muslims, dedicated Muslim as Taliban. And I think the sad part with them is that they radicalize the boys and girls with their madrasas. They established more than 21,000 madrasas in Afghanistan. The one they studied, so they trained like themselves. But because the people were saying that where our wives should go if you are not allowing the girls to get education, and there was a lot of criticism by all of us publicly that what will be the situation of health in the country overall. Then they allow the girls to go to get to midwifery and nursing, and then dentistry as well. But then suddenly they close it down. So I don't understand their mentality. To be very honest, as I said, I grown up in Afghanistan. I gone to co-education school in Helmand. Helmand is one of the conservative part of the country. 60 years ago. And nobody was harassing us. We didn't have a scarf. The school uniform was socks and skirts. We had uniform. People could not come. Girls could not come without uniform in the school. It was also strange because the boys didn't have the uniform, but the girls had the uniform. Well, we were happy with it. But now women cannot walk on the street. Women cannot go get education. Women cannot work. The only sector they are allowed to work is health. And they keep asking that the female doctor, when she goes to hospital, she has to be accompanied by her male relative. They cannot go to park. They have to be fully covered, which was not the case in Afghanistan before. People, particularly in the rural part of the country, people didn't know the burqa. They were not using the burqa. Now they are introducing mainly the Arabic hijab, which is not our culture. And imposing on people. The latest law that they approve, it's called the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice. In that law, they said women's voice should not be heard by anyone. So even in the mosque, you cannot pray loudly. You cannot greet your own other fellow or your own neighbors who comes to the same mosque. And they said that women cannot even loudly say Allahu Akbar, the God is great, which Allahu Akbar is very common among we use every minute. So their voice should not be heard. Music is not allowed. And they're proud to burn music, 24,000 music instruments. And that is their pride. So you can imagine which kind of people. I never thought in my life that we will see this kind of people in this century. At least this time the technology is advanced than the first time when the Taliban was in power. They had all these restrictions in the first time, and including the photo was not allowed, TV was not allowed, radio for female was not allowed. This time they cannot do that. They cannot control that because the technology is much advanced in the country. We had only one television channel in Afghanistan that they closed the door, they locked the door and nobody could use it. But currently they use television, but slowly they keep on this new law. They said that no figure of living things should be seen in the television. So they changed the television to radio, in fact, because you cannot read the news. There's nothing else there. But even you cannot read the news because the men face. And in that law, they also said that people cannot keep the photos of humans and any living things on their personal devices. And one point, actually, they were really telling people that people cannot use the iPhone, which has 3 cameras. 3i telephone is not allowed. They released another order that the woman cannot use the smartphone. So the companies have to make a special phone for women in Afghanistan. Without camera, without any advanced application. Any other question? Yes.
Yeah, just to go back to the question of the Hazaras, I had heard from people, I spent a bit of time there, and my understanding is that whereas under the Taliban, which is Pashtun, they're more fundamentalist in their culture, that women were far more repressed because of the fundamentalist Islam that they followed, whereas the Hazara women, as you said, that they were a lot more progressive in many ways. And the fact that under the international forces, when they were there, ISAF and others, that it was the Hazara women or the minority women seemed to have really embraced the empowerment or the freedoms that were being provided by the Americans, whereas the Pashtun women, because of the fact that they were already in fundamentalist situations, they found it harder to break out of that prison that they were in. That in fact, the Hazara women seemed to be, a lot of the films that were made of the women boxing and things like that, they were mainly women from the north, from Herat and places like that. So did you see that in this crazy way that has benefited, that has empowered the women of these minority tribes or communities to break out much faster than the Pashtun or the Taliban women?
Well, I would put it differently. One, I think the lack of facilities and lack of schools or accessibility to school and health services or any other basic social services for everybody was difficult. But what happened in the last, let's say, during the war in Afghanistan, I don't want to say that I started the girls' schools in Hazarajat. Was not easy at the beginning. I started with the boys' schools first in the areas where I come from. And then next year, when I saw that the people were interested to education, then we started the girls' schools. So it was not easy. That's why during the 90s, we were able to expand schools in different parts of the Hazarajat. And they continue that. The second point, during the 20 years of the NATO forces in Afghanistan, in Hazarajat, it was not a lot of fighting. And they really used the possibility to let their boys and girls to be educated. Thirdly, because they have been oppressed, usually the oppressed people get the development and freedom catched sooner than the other people who are already in a position of power and think that it's a pride. I mean, in some Pashtun areas, they say that the woman can get out of the house twice. Once when she married and go to the husband. Second, when she dies, go to the graveyard. This is not the case for the Hazaras. Because education really brought them out. So that was the reason. And for the Pashtuns, unfortunately, their areas were continued fight. But some of the Pashtuns are also really got the possibility to get education. But not a lot, because one, they are naturally conservative, and the acceptance for the extremist kind of terminology misusing of Islam. And it was continuous fight. In Helmand, for example, Helmand has 12, 15 districts. Only 1 or 2 districts was under control of the government. The rest was under control of the Taliban. In some of the districts in Helmand and Uruzgan, in mainly very conservative Pashtun part, the government could not even go. So it was Taliban system. And it was under Taliban. They never allowed that schools for the boys and girls. They were allowing the health services because it was needed, but not the schools, not the education, because they see that education, when people are getting education, then they will not believe on their interpretation of religion or interpretation of goodness. That is actually the sad part. And there's more acceptance of patriarchy. When there's less educated people, it's more patriarchy. Who clap for the Proud Boys, sorry to say, but yes, I'm living in this country. I cannot stop myself not to give the example.
I don't think you're alone. I think we're all making those comparisons right now in our heads. So I have a question. You mentioned these laws, not allowed to have photos on your phone. The women not being able to speak in public, not being able to go out at all. I also know from some of the other guests we've had here that many Afghans in exile are using technology to teach courses to girls over the internet, that there's also other avenues of support. And I guess what I'm curious about is, what do you know of what resistance looks like among both women and men in Afghanistan? How are people resisting? What form does that take? I guess also what are the risks of it, but also how does that look? In what ways are people successfully resisting, if at all?
I don't know if I would name it successfully, but yes, I think for the girls who still live in Afghanistan and still get out of the house and try to teach or to learn, either inside of the house or outside of the house, that is a resistance. That is a hope for the future of the country. But there are a lot of other NGOs. I mean, the NGO that I started still run home schools. I don't say it publicly because they will find it. And we don't put on the website and so on. And the universities still teach the girls online. Mm-hmm. Because they were in the first semester or second or third or fourth, fifth. And I said, they have to continue. So they teach them. And we try to, it's not easy to find money and to send it to Afghanistan. To teach the girls short-term computer skills so they could make payroll, for example, from home. So it's not completely, that is the resistance of the people. But because they are so brutal, people cannot come on the street to do it. And I keep saying on my interviews that where are the men in Afghanistan? Because it's every household's problem. And it's the way I try to encourage Taliban to let the schools. I said they are actually doing very bad to the Pashtun society. So to encourage them to let the girls go and get education. Because they need a doctor. They need a teacher. Who would be that? They need midwife. It's discrimination and it's crime they are committing to and none, of course, a lot of bad habit to their own people more than anybody else. Unfortunately, the opposition to the Taliban is also not very united. Mm. One of the reasons I think we were all in shock. We are hardly recovering from our shocks. To let's say that people do not trust the warlords anymore and the previous Mujahideen anymore. And they failed. They were the one when we had the Republic and so on, one of my personal fight publicly was the impunity. We need to stop the impunity. We need to promote accountability. In a country or in a family, when part of the population is superior than other part is inferior, that is the beginning of the conflict. We start the conflict within the family. That's why I was fighting in trying to teach even the students in the small university that I had. It was 2,200 or 2,500 students. That was big enough. It was going to 2,500 families, the way we were teaching the gender and peace building, so-called. it's gone. So the warlords and the unfortunately all those corrupt officials also. I mean, one of the reasons was the corruption, because they saw the soldiers, the police, we were losing 50 people per day. And then we saw that the officials making money and taking to Dubai or Istanbul or to Qatar, but it's more in Dubai rather than Qatar, and bringing back to these countries. Yep. So people did not trust those people. So it requires, I think, time, and I hope people realize that this is enough. Now it's 3.5 years. And child marriage is increasing. Of course, poverty now with the cut of the humanitarian aid to Afghanistan would be another disaster, because already we have a lot of malnutrition, a lot of child marriage, a lot of forced marriages, a lot of other lack of facilities for simple health. It was a report by BBC that showed in Kandahar that people were dying because they cannot buy their medicine. And in the constitution of Afghanistan, the constitution that we had, the only country who doesn't have a constitution is Afghanistan. The only country who has official ban on girls' education is Afghanistan. We have extreme Islamic government in Iran, we have extreme Islamic government in Saudi, but none of them has this official bans on education. So it's very unfortunate. I think it's all so depressing, but I believe that injustice in Afghanistan contribute to injustice to the world. And so we have to really promote human rights, inequality everywhere, beyond our borders, in order to save humanity, including, let's say, public health. And I don't know what will happen to vaccinations with the cut of funding, and I don't know what will happen to the climate. We suffer from climate here and there. My son lives in Houston. They had snow in Houston. Yeah. Any other question? Okay, go ahead.
I think in addition to the political situation, I guess one of the huge problems that you have there, and in a lot of other places where there is this creeping fundamentalism coming to sort of center stage, that when you couch things in religious terms, I mean, you say things like, even where I've heard of women, for instance, in childbirth, because they didn't want to be touched by men, doctors, they would bleed to death. I mean, they would hemorrhage to death. But it was still considered that they would go to heaven if they bled to death rather than had a man touch them. And so if you have things like, if you have 15 children, you are more likely to go to heaven than if you have 1 or 2. I mean, if you couch it in those terms, if you tie everything up in fundamentalist religion, how do you then attack that part of it? I mean, the political situation or the, secular education or whatever it is, that's a different category as well. But in terms of actual, generations of this kind of belief, how do you break that? How do you tackle that?
Good quality education, science. I think if you study physics and chemistry, you would not believe that when you bleed to death, you will go to heaven.
Yeah, but if you're not even allowed to go to school, how do you get into that? How do you make
That's
the
why
changes?
we are fighting. I mean, it's not only in Islamic countries. In non-Islamic countries, when they use the religion in order to control, that is the case. That's same in India, for example, in part of part of Nepal. The widows, for example, they have to wear a white sari. They cannot even wear colorful clothes. This is in current India. When they use the religion, any religion, not only in Islam, any religion which is used to that extreme, that can be abolished by education. That's the only way, in my personal view. I don't have a prescription for all the diseases, but one of the main diseases, I think, everywhere, when you have superior people and inferior people, when you divide the people on different categories. I mean, everybody cannot be completely equal because different mind, different capability, but in dignity, everybody has to be equal. Simply people close their eyes and say that I don't see that person, that kind of people, so that doesn't exist. That is not going to work here in this country. So let alone in Afghanistan or India, in corner of India. So in our case, in Afghanistan, I think Taliban wants one gender. It's not two gender, two sex. One sex should be exist. Just to, again, thank you so much. I hope it was useful. And again, I will invite you to read the book. And the last point that I wanted to say, Wendy mentioned the Nobel Peace Prize. I was competing with President Obama. But he got it.
You deserved it.
Yeah.
Thank you. But who can compete with the most powerful person in the world?
You did it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our program. It was great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sima Samar. I want to say something. In our life, having a wonderful and supportive provider, teacher, professor, supervisor, and friend can make a big, huge difference in your life. I'm really happy, I'm very lucky to have this kind of friends like Dr. Sima Samar, professor like Professor Wendy, Professor John Rubin, Alexandra Henniker. And I'm really thankful for being such great mentors. Your trust in me has pushed me to be better and explore my new idea in my work, in my job. And just every time you gave me a helpful feedback, it can help me to be more confident. I know we have faced many challenges and celebrated our success and created wonderful and unforgettable memories. I am truly thankful for all of these shared moments. In the end, again, I am really thankful. Thank you so much, Dr. Sima Samar, for sincerely accepting our invitation. Your presence here means a lot to me. I think you did everything for our generation. If Dr. Sima Samar didn't help our generation like me, I wouldn't be here. I want to say about my school. When I was at school, we had a high school. There was a lot of students, maybe around 5,000 students. But we had just 3 teachers. It was official teachers from government. But we had a lot of teachers, like they were helped by Sima Samar and her organization. And also, sometimes it was very difficult. For example, we had to pay wheat. Do you know wheat? For example, like with gandum. Yeah, it is wheat. We had to pay wheat like salary to our teachers. Thank you so much again. It was wonderful event, and thank you for participating in this nice event.
Thank you, Professor Wendy, and it's my pleasure that I meet you in person, and I hope that I will be in touch with you and see you, and thank you for helping our scholars at risk, and thanks for the generosity and support of the American people to our people here and also in Afghanistan. It's really, really give us hope, and thank you for facilitating and supporting these people here, the Afghan refugees here, so they can be a good citizen, not only for America, but for the world, for this planet. And I appreciate that personally, and thank you for making facilitating tonight's program. And thanks to everyone who came in this cold, cold weather just to listen to some of my stories.
Second.